and calm Thursday morning. Welcome to your perfect morning starter right here on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
I'm Kaido Kikilu. It is Thursday, May the 7th, and it's 7 a.m. It's perfect, isn't it?
Indeed.
But naturally, the political space is nothing perfect. I mean, who is perfect? What is perfect? But it looks like there is way too much contention, as it seems. Literally, anywhere you turn to, it could be within the political parties, even the National Assembly, there's always something happening. And it just raises questions about just how much of a governance are we doing? How much of politics are we giving attention and time to? It'll look like politics is taking most of the day and the attention, while governance is just barely getting by. And naturally, we call it the altercation yesterday between Senator Shemole and would I call it the rest of the Senate, or the Senate President, and is it the whip now? That's a major one.
Maybe not the rest of the Senate, but indeed, unmistakably, you would find the chief whip in the mix and the Senate President in the mix. And what's the backstory? It's a disagreement over a report presented on the amendment of the Senate standing rules, which was going to restrict eligibility for contest of the office of the Senate President to those who had been in the Senate in the prior 2 terms. And I think Senator Shomole was having none of it, but the Senate leadership was going to proceed with it nonetheless. And, you know, the Senate President was trying to call a senator from Edo North, you know, to order, and he insisted that by now, you know, there's no new senator, and every senator should be knowledgeable of what the standing rules were. And Senator Shomole, according to the standing rules, was out of order. And for the second time, by this time, you would see that, you know, the Senate President was indeed angry. He said he would, based on the rules, order the senator out of the Senate if he was not, you know, keeping his calm. So let's see what played out yesterday.
Mr. President, distinguished Senator Adams Oshimole, please be guided. I don't want to be guided. I don't want to invoke the powers of the office of the chief whip. Be guided.
People have been in these chambers for 3 years now. We should begin to know the rules of the Senate. I don't want to be accused of executive arrogance. That's why I keep tolerating these things. Please, there's no new senator any longer. Distinguished senator, we shouldn't just go home, fill form, contest election, come here without knowing anything about the rules. Order 20 sub F says that the Senate President shall interpret the rules. I didn't write this. So, please, Senator Oshimole, for the last time, if you become unruly in the Senate, we will use these same rules to take you out of the Senate. So this is the last warning.
So, there you go. The Riot Act has been read, and it looks like this battle has just begun. Clearly not what you would expect in terms of the governance that we want to see, because at the end of the day, this is about the internal politics, who's going to be the next presiding officer. That's what this is all about, the 11th Senate, right? They can say, oh, well, we're fighting for fundamental human rights. Everybody should be able to aspire to lead the 11th Senate. That's what it's about primarily. So I really hope that the Senate can resolve their own issues without making it look this sour to the public. But it's, again, good. So Nigerians will see just what their representatives are doing in the National Assembly. And as we always say, maybe, just maybe, this is what the constituents have sent the lawmakers to do. So that if they don't have issues with it, if they're not calling them back and saying, that's not what we sent you for, all well and good. We will face our own lawmakers and the generality of the lawmakers, but it's important for the people to hold their lawmakers to account.
And speaking of, you know, governance perhaps suffering as a result, we hope that that is not the case. But the Senate also yesterday considered, or screened, if you like, the new ministerial nominee that will supposedly take over the Ministry of Power, Mr. Joseph Tegbe, yesterday. And of course, he came through with a resolve to make changes, maybe not necessarily deliver on, or not necessarily promise what cannot be delivered, but he promised to restore discipline and, of course, ensure timely, you know, delivery of power within a couple of months. And so Nigerians are gearing to see, you know, perhaps that a new breath of fresh air will be restored to that Ministry of Power following concerns over the management of that ministry, you know, when the former Minister of Power was in office, of course, who resigned to, you know, pursue governorship ambition in Oyo State. So all eyes are on the new leadership, you know, once he is sworn in. So we saw that also come through from the Senate yesterday. But there are other issues coming through today, Coyote.
Oh, yes. One of the biggest stories, or at least the follow-up to the stories, is the media chat by the FCT Minister, Nyesom Wike, yesterday, where he spoke about a wide range of issues from PDP politics to national politics to governance in the FCT, that's the nation's capital. And you may have heard the FCT Minister also speaking about certain property belonging to Channels Television, or at least that houses Channels Television in the nation's capital, Abuja. Well, Channels Television has now released an official rebuttal to the statement that was made by the FCT Minister that Channels is making money from the land allocated to it in Guzape. Well, it is not correct. The property, which houses our national headquarters in the Guzape area of Abuja, that land actually was allocated to CTV, that's Channels Television, on March the 6th, 2007, 19 years plus ago, for commercial purpose by the then FCT Minister. And we can confirm to you that all of the required fees and charges were fully paid. So yet again, the statement that Channels is making money from the land allocated to it in Guzape, that statement made by the FCT Minister during the media chat, is not correct. And we can say that unequivocally. Secondly, the point made about Channels being paid and other media houses being paid for that media chat, of course, we gave a full disclosure just before it started that that is live coverage. To get that to our viewers, the stations there have to deploy their outside broadcasting van, a crew of up to 6, sometimes more. I mean, our fees are out there. So there's full disclosure, our fees are out there. We are a news and broadcast media organization. So if you're going to lock down 1, 2, 3 hours of airtime, of course you will pay. You will get value for it and will ensure to ask the right questions, which is what we did yesterday and we're doing before all of that came up. And we'll stay on those questions because we will not allow any form of deflection. The questions will be asked and we will ensure that we guard the trust we have built for over 30 years as a media organization that is built on credibility, the ethics of journalism, balance, and the rest. And to the third one, about land being allocated to journalists, well, it's important for the FCT minister to also come out full. What exactly is the land for? Who got the land? And the fees to be paid should be paid. It's as simple as that. But I think it's important for us to stay on business, the questions being asked, and get responses for Nigerians. So, Bukola.
Well, it's important that these things come up, time and again, such that we can have the opportunity to put them in proper context. And so it came up yesterday, and many would begin to wonder, what exactly the true situation was. Has the land been allocated to Channels Television indeed in the past? And so it is now out there what the true situation is. Rather, it was allocated for commercial purposes, and all documentations required for the use of that land were obtained and paid for. And so that's the true situation of things. But there are other matters for your attention this morning. The Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, has announced the approval of a uniform policy aimed at checking the growing abuse and politicization of honorary degrees, including the practice of awarding them to serving public officials. This came up yesterday when he addressed State House correspondent, and he said the policy was among approvals granted at the last Federal Executive Council meeting chaired by President Bola Tinubu. Of course, he was accompanied by the Minister of State for Education. He expressed concern over what he called the growing proliferation and misuse of honorary degrees by some tertiary institutions. And it's, I'm quite glad that there's an acknowledgement here that the honorary degrees are often awarded to serving public officials, time and again, during convocation ceremonies of higher institutions, you would see authorities of those institutions conferring honorary degrees on perhaps a serving governor, a serving senior legislator at the federal level, perhaps sometimes even at the state level. I'm quite sure that, Kade, you have also been approached sometime in the past for a request of conferment of an honorary degree on you. And so, time and again, we get, a point of order, not on the floor of the National Assembly now, perhaps here or in other engagements from, some officials who say that they are a doctor, and you must refer to them by that title, and some actually obtain that title, through exertion of the process, a study, and, serving time, and of course doing the research work on that. But some have that title as an honorary title, and so the argument is, which do you go by now? But the federal government has now put it out there, has set the record straight. They should not be referred to as doctor if they have not obtained that degree as a result of the exertion and the work needed to be put into it.
Oh, yes. So you start asking people now, is this honorary or did you work for it, literally? But I think the minister also said that all universities must now obtain clearance from the National Universities Commission, NUC, before conferring honorary degrees on any individual. So the NUC will vet all of the proposed recipients to ensure that only deserving individuals are honored, effectively ending what the government described as indiscriminate awards. So we'll take a moment now. When we return, the front pages are up next. Stay with us. All right, let's walk you through how the dailies are reporting the big stories today. And we have joining us on the program Mr. Ambrose Igboke. He's live for us virtually. Good morning, Mr. Igboke. Welcome to the program.
Well, Kayode, good morning. I'm glad that you discussed this issue of doctors. So those of us who end it academically can now be rightly referred to as doctors.
I saw that coming.
You want us to send our certificate so that we can prove it.
I love that. I love that. Flaunt it because you worked for it. So we're starting off with New Telegraph today, and the New Telegraph leads with what it describes as Islamization agenda claims. We can't remove Christianity from Nigeria. It's impossible. That's coming from the Sultan. Says Nigerians must resist divisive narratives. Says Can President calls for unity, religious literacy, promote tolerance ahead of 2027 polls. Akome tells clerics and traditional rulers. So clearly there was a meeting where these conversations came up yet again. But Dr. Egbuke, what do you make of this?
Well, I just think that the Sultan should talk to, you know, a lot of the Islamic sects that do high voltage rhetoric, like Murik sometimes, Muslim Right something Council, who, you know, at every point in time, they, you know, just recently, one of the Islamic groups said that anybody who is not a Muslim should not be voted for. You know, these are not helpful. So the Sultan is a very, very revered, you know, ruler. He's not just a traditional ruler; he's also a religious ruler. So I think it's also start from home to talk to some of these radicals that spew all kinds of invectives, you know, against other religions. Also, where like what is happening in Anambra State now, where a lot of the so-called, we know that there are fake people, that there are fake DBS, native doctors or herbalists or what we call traditional priests, but also there are fake pastors, there are fake imams and all the rest. So why are we also going against, just only against the fake traditional people? So we should treat religion as dispassionately different from what governance is, and what goes around everybody should also go around. So these are the things to look at. But Nigeria has become, I agree with the Sultan, that Nigeria has become what it is. It's a pluralistic society, and the earlier we begin to accept the fact that we all belong to the same country, the better. So those carrying agenda that you are going to Islamize Nigeria, or those carrying the agenda that everybody in Nigeria must be born again, should think twice, because in the Constitution of Nigeria, though it's a secular, you know, constitution, but again, we saw a lot of religion issues coming up in the Constitution. So we need to make up our mind whether we are going to be a religious, you know, again, the Constitution has the penal code and the other code also, the Sharia code. And so, you know, these things, you know, doubles as confusion sometimes to say whether we're a secular state or even one part of one religion is being, you know, pampered and the others are just being allowed to live. And so we should look deeply into what unites us and not what divides us.
Yeah, well said. And so from there, let's head to the Vanguard newspaper that also captures another national issue. This is worsening hardship, as you would see on the front page of The Guardian, insecurity, poverty, pushing Nigerians to brink, NLC warns. It's a page 5 read. We also see from the rider there, faults finance minister's insistence on fuel subsidy removal. Presidency won't bring back subsidy. That's ascribed, of course, to the finance minister, coming off on the back of the meeting with global investors in France. What are your thoughts on the position of the federal government on fuel subsidy removal, particularly on that also that has to do with the increase in pump price of petrol against the backdrop of the conflict in Iran, saying that the federal government will not impose any form of price control as it would respect the autonomy in the markets?
I believe strongly, and it's a very strong opinion that I hold, that the Nigerian government in the economics of subsidy got it all wrong from the beginning in this Bola Tinubu administration. We are going to France to talk to those who subsidize their citizens. those who make sure everything is available for their citizens. You are talking to Europe that subsidize their farmers. You are talking to Europe that does mortgage, that does health insurance, that does all kinds of, in fact, that pay jobless people in terms of social protections. You know, you don't have any social protection. Yet these people, they remove subsidy because they have put everything in place. We have countries who look at even our own neighbor here, Ghana, that has brought down pump price because of hardship on the citizens. Yet we are an oil producing nation. Therefore, we should not bring out all these economics of maybe Brentwood or where we have in UK or where we have in even in Switzerland and all those Brussels and all those things. While we may try to look at the concepts that define such economies and apply it locally, all economics should be local. But unfortunately for Nigeria, we are just doing textbook economics, not looking at the realities of our situation. You are removing fuel price at the same time you floated the naira, at the same time you did all kinds of things. Subsidy is what you owe your citizens. It's not a favor. So instead of removing subsidy, first of all, subsidy the petroleum sector came because the federal government failed woefully to make the refineries work, to refine locally. So you are transferring your failure of leadership to the citizens. It is not right. It's not correct. Therefore, instead of looking at how to remove subsidy and suffer the citizens, the federal government should make the refineries work so that we will refine our local needs locally and bring down the price. Now you are comparing me to buy gasoline or buy kerosene. I have little ones in youngsters in school complaining in the universities that kerosene is now 2,200 per liter. How do you want students to survive in that kind of environment? Yet you go to France and say you don't need fuel subsidy. Meanwhile, even UK, they use money from foreign students to subsidize the school fees of their own citizens. Why foreign students pay as much as 4 times the school fees? These are mechanisms that countries have put to subsidize their citizens. But our own leaders wear suits and go to Britain and knot a tie and speak English and French with them and say, oh, we are not going to do because IMF told you not to do it. I think we should come down and do homegrown economics to make our people work. Countries are considering, because of the effect of the Iran war, how to subsidize their citizens and make it better. And Nigeria is proudly saying we won't put subsidy to ameliorate the hard situations of the city. This shows that the government is not caring at all and does not even think about the welfare of the people.
Well, The Guardian is next, Mr. Agboke, and it leads with the health sector. 85% of primary healthcare centers in distress, without doctors, despite 55.4 billion naira budget in 4 years. And you see a breakdown, system at the breaking point. That's how the Guardian titles that breakdown. Only 8,309 facilities, and you have severe utility shortages. Only 51% have electricity, 38% lack access to water, and that's water, basic water. 40% lack laboratory services, and it goes on and on.
I want to thank the Guardian for highlighting this pathetic situation once more. I have a lot of friends and doctors. I'm very familiar with the health sector because even my wife is a nurse. So I know the issues that happen there. When you go to the teaching hospitals and talk to the doctors there, you will be shocked about the number of people that live on daily basis. In fact, I went to a teaching hospital in the southeast here, and they told me that the shortfall of nurses, that an average of 50 nurses, in fact, they are coming and they are rolling over, and living yearly. So how do they cope? And the government is not even, replacing them as they leave. We are talking about a teaching hospital here, not even a primary health center. The consultants are leaving. They are going to South Africa. They are going to Rwanda. They are going to Canada. They are leaving for UK. They are going US and just leaving Saudi Arabia. They are leaving because the pay is so pathetic compared to what their colleagues are earning in Senate clients. So What do we do? Go to school of colleges of nursing or nursing departments of universities and talk to the students. Just you can take this as a vox pop or a report and ask them, what are you going to do after you leave school? I bet you that 90% of them, this is an experiment I've done myself, will tell you we'll leave the country. So even you see nursing colleges opening everywhere, you see more students looking for nursing courses. Why? They want to leave the country. That is just in their mindset. So it's going to be even worse because the pay is very poor, even for those living in urban areas. Remember that most of these primary health centers are in the rural areas. There are no doctor quarters. There are no nursing quarters. There are nowhere to stay. There are no accommodation. So somebody is living in Ikeja, for example, and he wants to go all the way to a primary health center in Badagry. How does that person cope? Or he wants to go to a village, So primary health center is the nearest to the citizens in the grassroots, and these are supposed to be at least have a doctor and some nurses. So what can improve it is let's have a doctor's quarter, let's have a nursing quarter, so at least they can be comfortable living in that environment. Give them power supply, maybe solar power to give them some level of power supply per day. Pay them more than those who are working in the urban areas, so that they can have extra incentives. So by the time they live in a free house, they don't pay electricity bill, they earn higher. You will see that people will now start lobbying to even be posted to primary health centers. But if their incentives are not there and they are earning at par with those who are still in the urban area, then there's going to be a problem. And then the local governments are becoming so inactive that one keeps wondering if they still exist. Now that allocation are going to them directly, what are they doing with the money? So they should vote more money to maintain primary health centers, so that we don't have this kind of pitiable figures we are having. They can do better, and our primary health can be better only if we, focus on making them better.
So from the minister to the commissioners to the local government heads, I mean, this is right at your doorstep. It's not even too much to ask for. It's the basic primary healthcare centers. And it's really sad to see what is playing out. But Dr. Ambrose Igboke, we must thank you, Chairman Guild of Public Affairs Analysts, Enugu State. I understand you have a book launch today, so we wish you the very best, Dr.
Thank
Igboke.
you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bukola.
Yes, indeed. Let's dive straight into this next one. And of course, in the last 48 hours, we've seen that the Senate is proposing a committee, a fact-finding committee, to visit South Africa over concerns of rising xenophobic attacks targeting African nationals, and some of them being Nigerians. And of course, this follows concerns over the killing of 2 Nigerians in South Africa in recent times in another wave of xenophobic attacks. We also saw, the senator from Edo North, during that particular session, propose retaliatory measures against South Africa, specifically the withdrawal of the licenses of some of their companies operating here in Nigeria. Let's feel the pulse of South Africa now amid this very concerning issues. And our correspondent, Innocent Samusa, joins us from South Africa this morning. Good morning, Innocent.
Very good morning to you, colleagues in studio. It's good to be alongside you.
Yeah, it's good to have you back very soon, but we had hoped that it would be in better circumstances. I was hoping that by this time there would be progress, more stability since we last spoke, but it appears as if stories have come through about protests in some parts of South Africa where South Africans are demanding that, other African nationals, maybe Nigerians now specifically, perhaps you provide clarity for us on that one, should exit South Africa. Talk to us about these happenings and, help us understand what exactly is happening, and then perhaps we'll move from there.
All right, so where we are at the moment, I must say, colleague, that there is progress, but people are impatient, people are running out of patience, and understandably so, because this matter needs different arms. You need the Department of International Relations, you need the mission here in Johannesburg, the Nigerian mission here, to deal with this matter on the ground. So we had a media briefing the day before yesterday with the ambassador, with the acting ambassador to South Africa, Nigerian ambassador to South Africa, that is Alexandra Timitope Ajayi, who had mentioned, colleague, categorically that in the recent protest, there is no report of a Nigerian being abused. And also, there is no Nigerian shops that were looted in the recent report, apart from the one that happened in the Eastern Cape, where it was resolved with the Minister of International, or the Minister of Cooperative Governance in that province. But apart from that, there is no report of being, of Nigerians being abused. That's at least that's the report that we're getting from the ambassador. However, he mentioned, colleague, that there is the new media, the podcasters and the people who post things online, they resuscitate old videos. These old videos from 2007, from 2010, and they bring them back to now, and then they just make it seem as though it's new. So he appealed with the media, the mainstream media, to fact check before they put things online. I mean, on their platforms, because it quells the fire. I mean, not quell the fire to say per se, but it now put the situation in a very precarious position, for lack of a better term. So I think the challenge here that we're seeing is because the new media, the podcasters, are putting things that are not right. Perhaps it's time now to talk about how do we regulate them, because it's wrong that they're, perpetrating things that are not actually happening. But also, I think there is lack of synergy from the Nigerian community here in the country, where there are different voices. I mean, the embassy is telling you that we are talking to the Department of International Relations. There is a commitment to deal with this issue, but other arms of the Nigerian community, they just don't want to listen to what the embassy is saying. And the embassy has been talking to the Department of International Relations, the minister here, Ronald Lamola, who has also categorically condemned what is happening at the moment. But I can tell you also that the march to March, it's legitimate. It is a good call, but they do not have the right to then abuse people on the road, to then ask people to present their papers. Because if you're in a country, colleague, you need to be documented. For your safety and the safety of people around you. If anything happens to you, we know who you are. We know what you're doing in the country. So that's a good call. But how they're going about it, it's wrong. They cannot, harass people on the road and ask them to show papers. It's only law enforcement officers who are allowed to do that. So I think there is that commitment, but also there is a little bit of no coordination. There's a need for that synergy from the Nigerian community in the country. And I'm talking about the different associations here, your NICASA, your NUSA, and all of these arms to really come together and listen to what the mission is saying and listen to what the Department of International Relations is saying, so that we can quell this fire, colleague.
Innocent, are you saying that it's not true that there has been another round of protest by South Africans demanding that foreign nationals exit the country?
No, I'm not saying there hasn't been. There has been those protests. I mean, they've been going on in Johannesburg, in Pretoria, and in Durban. But the report that we're getting here is that in the recent protests, no Nigerian shops has been looted, and no Nigerian.
So help us understand why those protests are ongoing. The nationals who have been found to be currently residing in South Africa, are they illegally residing in South Africa? What's responsible for this round of what some perceive as intolerance?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, they're demanding that illegal foreigners must leave South Africa because, I mean, these people, colleague, you and I know, they can perform crimes. And if they perform crimes, nobody knows who did this crime because they're not answerable to anyone. They're not recorded anywhere. So hence I'm saying earlier that it is a good call, the march to March. It's them trying to get attention from government to say that
Innocent,
deal with illegal. Yes.
Anyone can perpetrate crime. Even a South African national can perpetrate crime. Shouldn't that now be dealt with holistically instead of tagging foreign nationals for being responsible or narrowing it down to nationals from Ghana or from Nigeria?
I think the issue here is the fight for resources, and it emanates from the lack of service delivery from the South African government, and therefore citizens are misdirecting their anger to foreign nationals, and they're not a problem here. The problem comes from the government. The government is failing to really give these people jobs. The economy has been stagnant. The health sector is congested. You look at education, we don't have enough schools, and the health sector and the correctional services as well. So these are the issues that come at the back of these protests. That's why I'm saying that it is, when you look at it, it is a good call, but is misdirected to,
Right.
to foreign nationals.
Right. As we wind down, Innocent, so, I mean, there are key figures in this, call it vigilantism or anti-foreigner protest. I think a lot of people will have seen in Gizwe Chunu's video as a media personality in South Africa, Jacinta Ngobeze. And I know that the Minister of International Relations, Minister Ronald Lamola, had said that they're looking forward to police action against this vigilantism and those who are hunting for illegal immigrants. And I keep asking myself, is enough being done to show that, hey, we're standing against this, this is not what we stand for? And more importantly, for those who are leading the charge for some of these things that may go violent, you see foreigners being accosted on the road and, you know, threatened, a lot of the videos we have seen. Is enough being done? And is it as though the government is being careful as well? Because it's being careful of its own approval ratings at home, but it's torn betwixt also looking good to the international community. Is that why we're seeing this sort of hesitation and there's no stamp to say, you know what, this must stop right now, let the police do their work?
Well, Kayode, I think the issue here is that the government is also trending carefully because it's election year. And they do not want to, I mean, it's not popular for you to be against what the masses are doing on the ground. So I guess the issue is that it's election year, so government is also trying to, you know, see what they can do. But that also, it makes it difficult because, I mean, you just mentioned in your intro that the Senate is proposing measures to cut the likes of your MTN, your DSTV, and this is these are, you know, big private sector that has been contributing to both economies. And I mean, you talk about jobs there, you talk about the business relations that might crumble because of this. So it's a bit of a dichotomy, if you ask me, because the government has been, I'm disappointed at our government, at the South African government, because there's been a slow snail pace to dealing with this issue. Hence, I'm saying that I guess this is happening because it's election year. They are trying not to, to maybe to appease the masses on the ground. So it is disappointing from the South African government from that point of view, where they're taking really much time to deal with this issue, and it could really get better.
You know, the issues are more deep-seated, Innocent, when you say that it's election year and, you know, that perhaps could be responsible for that. That itself should be interrogated. But it's a big conversation and it's a continuing one. We hope to have you back during which we hopefully would follow up on that. Innocent Samosa is our South Africa correspondent. Thank you so much for joining us on this one.
Thank you, Colleen.
And so we'll take a moment now. When we return, what does the new Senate rule restricting eligibility for the contest of the office of the Senate President and other principal offices to those who have served in the 10th Senate, what does it mean for the 2027 elections and, of course, for the 11th Senate? Stay with us to find out after this time out.
big controversy in the 10th Senate about the standing rules that have been amended. There was an altercation between Senator Adams Oshomole, the president of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, even the chief whip had to step in, Senator Mongunu. So what exactly is playing out here? We're going to look at the procedural angle. There's a whole politics of things played out, but what does the Senate procedures, rules, regulations, the law established in the Senate, what does it say about things such as this? Well, we have joining us on the program a legislative governance expert, policy analyst, and president of Africa Legislative Innovation Hub, Chibuzo Okereke. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning, my brother.
Just to be clear,
my sister, of course.
I see a PhD in your name. Is this honorary doctorate or the one you worked for?
This is the one I worked for.
This is the one you worked for. Oh,
please.
So, Dr. Okereke, you're welcome
Absolutely,
to the program.
Yeah.
So let's get right into what's playing out in the Senate. First, I want you to give us a background. So how, the standard rules, the orders, are usually amended. Then we'll get to whether this one was done right or not. So what is usually the procedure, and what spurs or what usually moves the Senate to say, we want to amend this area, we want to amend this area?
All right, thank you very much. Like every other law, the Senate or indeed the House of Rep has the power to amend laws under the Constitution in terms of practice and procedure. And whenever any senator is at liberty to identify a provision on the standing orders that requires amendment, the person proposes that amendment to the Senate, and copies will be distributed to all senators, and a date will be slated for the consideration of that particular amendment. After the debate, it will be referred to a committee who will then look at it and report back to Senate for adoption. Once that is done, it's transmitted for the bureaucracy, the clerk, to now include what has been amended into the standing orders. As you know, Section 60 of the Constitution empowers the Senate or the House of the National Assembly to make rules of procedure to govern the way they conduct their affairs, because the Constitution couldn't have provided every single detail about how the practice and procedure of legislative activities will go on each legislative day. So that, acting on the powers under Section 60, the standing orders are then enacted to provide for certain clear procedures on how a few things are done. So there are a number of intervening factors that can, inspire amendment. It could be political, it could be for other altruistic and governance or institutional reform reasons. So these are some of the contributing factors on why amendment will. For instance, if new committees are established, whether special committee under Order 95 or standing committees under Order 96 of the Senate standing orders, those new committees will now require to be, the standing order will be amended for those new committees to find expression in the standing orders of the Senate. Yeah.
So, the million-dollar questions. For clarity, what does this latest amendment really say? Because it lists, the kinds of people who can get involved for the 11 or subsequent Senate leadership position. But what does it really say? What does it really mean in the operationalization of it on the one hand? And did this particular amendment follow the due process? It's a double-edged sword.
Okay, first, let me say that this amendment is completely administrative. It's not substantive, it's not enforceable, nobody can implement it. I will take you to Section 47 of the Constitution that established the National Assembly. Section 48 established the composition of the Senate on equality of state, 3 senators per state, and then FCT, 1 senator. Section 50 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999, as amended, established the procedure for election of presiding officers. And it simply says that senators shall among themselves elect the president of the Senate and deputy president of the Senate. Now, acting on Order 60, the Senate enacted rules of procedure to implement this. Now, remember, that standing order is a subsidiary legislation that should give effect to the Constitution and not to undermine the Constitution. If you come to Order 3, Rule 4, and others that has now created this problem, it simply goes to Order 3, Rule 2, provided qualification for you to be president of the Senate and deputy president of the Senate. Before this current amendment, it was to the fact that you must have served 4 years in the Senate. Now, the latest amendment is speaking that you must have served 8 years and you must be a returning member from this current 10th Senate. Now, if the people in the 9th Senate has undertaken this type of amendment, the current president of the Senate wouldn't have been qualified because he was in the 8th Senate, didn't return in the 9th Senate, and came to the 10th Senate to emerge as president of the Senate. And it's also important to, let me explain this, that the process for election of presiding officers or sitting of a new parliament starts with activation of Section 64 of the Constitution, where the president is required to issue a proclamation to the clerk to the National Assembly on the date for new sitting to be called. In that setting, when senators are processed and they arrive at the chamber at the time that has been prescribed in the proclamation order, the clerk is expected to read that proclamation order and then proceed to conduct election of the presiding officers. And there are critical factors that will play in terms of procedure. Number one is that after a roll call has been made, the maze of the Senate maze will be in the lower bracket because the standing order says senators elect will participate in election of their presiding officer. Now, when that is done, the National Assembly clerk will now call for nominations. Any senator in line with Order 3, Rule 4H, and Order 3, Rule 4I are privileged to participate in that election. In fact, Order 3, Rule 4H provided that at the election of presiding officers, no debate or question of privilege shall be entertained, which means when that proceeding is going on, nobody can raise any motion or debate and say, oh, this procedure is not going on as prescribed. You can't do that. You're prohibited from doing that. Now, what is most important is that if you're running for president of the Senate seat, do you have somebody that will nominate you by substantive motion? Do you have a seconder to that motion? And then, are you ready to accept your nomination to stand for election? In this current 10th Assembly, we faced that challenge when distinguished Senator Abdulaziz Yari was running for the Senate presidency with distinguished Senator Godswill Akpabio. Senator Yari was in the House of Rep by order of ranking under Order 3, Rule 3. The senator was coming to the Senate for the first time, although he was in the House of Rep in the past. They said he wasn't qualified. But when the election was set, a motion was moved and seconded, and he stood for that election and almost won it. The difference between distinguished Senator Akpabio's vote and his own was just, I think, about 6 or 8 vote difference. So nobody should have fears. This is like a protectionist law that was not even necessary to be made because we can't run our institutions in the manner that will foreclose. It is Nigerians that are responsible for a senator that will return to the Senate in the 11th Assembly, not the Senate. Senators don't return themselves. They subject themselves to election, and Nigerians will say, oh, you can return through their ballot, or you will not return. So those coming for 11th Senate are not even aware how many people that will return, because in this current 10th Senate, we recorded 77% rate of turnover or more. In the House of Rep, about 80%. So how many percent rate of turnover are we going to have in the 11th Assembly? And in that situation, so, how does this apply? And again, when you make,
You may have struck...
If I can,
pardon me, you may have struck at the very heart of the conversation when you mentioned earlier that if the rules had been amended ahead of the 10th Senate, the Senate President may not have had the opportunity to become the Senate President because he was not in the 9th Senate. So these rules were amended behind closed doors, and it emerged afterwards. Why do you think there was no opposition to this amendment? As a matter of fact, the only challenge that we saw yesterday came from the senator representing Edo North. So why do you think there was very little opposition since so far? It may come perhaps later on, but we've seen very little opposition to this amendment.
Okay, yeah, I think it was a double-barrel question that Kayode asked. See, in terms of procedure, the Senate can hold a closed-door session to make consideration. However, the closed-door session does not qualify as a substantive parliamentary session to make decisions on any rule. That is why a committee of the whole is different from a closed-door session. Anything you discuss in the closed-door session, you must come back to committee of the whole for consideration and then go back and report proceedings for approval of the Senate at plenary, because the Senate functions at both plenary and at the committee of the whole to consider report on amendment. So when Senator Adams Oshimole raised a fundamental question, because there has been a procedural breach, and this 10th Senate, I can tell you, have recorded a lot of procedural breach on many issues, whether because of the rate of turnover or otherwise, we don't know. But Senator Oshimole was well within his rights, because when votes and proceedings of a Senate is being considered for approval, it's just the vote and proceedings is technical name for minutes of meeting of a normal organization. And when minutes of meeting are considered, matters arising come up. People can say, my name is not correct, or this item 2 is not the way it was passed or discussed. And we saw this during the Electoral Act Amendment, and we can't use that approach. So Senator Oshimole may have maybe used point of order, and they now brought the question as to whether point of order was the right instrument to be used. But the point is, if an amendment in vote and proceeding does not reflect what was passed in the sitting, a senator can point it out, and the presiding officer will simply ask the clerk to note it or correct. Because if you approve it, you will require a substantive motion to come for another amendment that what was passed is not reflective of what happened in the sitting when it was done. So there is clearly procedural gap in what has been done. But in terms of opposition, you see, the parliamentary politics is very deep. I remember before now, and I want Nigerians to pay attention to this. In the 11th Senate, you will see senators standing up to name the senator they want to vote for, unlike what we saw in the 10th Senate where secret ballot method was adopted. That is because as far back as October, November 2023, this same 10th Senate had amended the rule on voting method for presiding officers' election and changed it from secret ballot to open ballot. All these things are done to be able to capture power, capture the institution, weaken senators from being able to come together and take a decision on who is going to lead them. Because when you are to stand openly to elect a president of the Senate, if you don't support who the establishment is supporting, you may lose critical privileges, including committee chairmanship and other critical opportunities being in ECOWAS. But there are so many pets that can be affected because of the approach that has been adopted, yeah.
So let's wind down with this. Does this amendment stand? For those who have been saying it's targeted at somebody, Governor Hope Uzodimma, for example, who, by the way, has not been elected into the Senate, is still governor, last time I checked. Will this affect the newcomers, i.e., does it stand? Can it be challenged in court? Is it something that is justiciable in that sense? Because you said it's more administrative than anything. So does it stand?
I don't want people to, I don't think it's targeted to Hope or anybody, because how the new parliament plays out is totally different. When you go to election, dynamics can come in, and some of the people who are going to be anything may not even return to the Senate. So, I have mentioned here that Order 3, Rule 4H prohibits any senator from raising debate or a point of privilege at the time of election of presiding officer. If you can get somebody to nominate you and is seconded, because the standing order did not provide disqualification, they only provided qualification and no punitive measure. So maybe having put this out, they will go and try to amend that Order 3 Rule 4H to make sure that maybe a senator can raise the issue that somebody is not a ranking senator and is not returning, he has not served for 8 years and therefore cannot start for presiding officer's election. But in terms of whether this will stand, it will stand except somebody challenges it in the Senate with a substantive motion for the rescission of decision. For Senate to rescind its decision on that amendment that it does not reflect what they said they passed during their engagement.
In simple terms, will new senators or senators who serve in 10th Senate be able to run for those positions?
I can tell you categorically that they can run if they have a nominee and a seconder to the motion. Because at that time, I know they have amended the rule regarding that senators should take oath of office before they elect their presiding officer. They made that amendment, but sometimes I wonder because they may not even know why senators elect are allowed to elect presiding officer, because the presiding officer is the symbol and authority of the parliament. If you don't have a presiding officer, that parliament cannot be properly constituted to transact a business. In Ghana, I will end with this. If you don't elect Speaker of Ghana in a new parliament, the President of Ghana cannot be sworn in, because the Parliament of Ghana conduct the inauguration of the President of Ghana. So that is how powerful a presiding officer position is. So we make this amendment without recognizing that important authority and symbol of democracy invested in presiding officer of a parliament. Yeah.
There you go. So we'll see how things play out today, at least in the Senate and the coming days. We were speaking with Dr. Chibuzo Kiriki, legislative governance expert, policy analyst. Thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we've tried as much as possible to give you insight to clear all of the noise regarding this, but it's something we're following. I'm talking about the controversy in the Senate regarding the standing orders and who gets to run for presiding officers' positions in the coming Senates. But let's head back to South Africa and see what's playing out. Bukola.
Indeed, Kadi, you know, Innocent had said that there is progress, but the progress that has been achieved in dousing tension and, you know, checking the continuing anti-immigration, anti-illegal migrant protests may just be slow. You know, it could be better than what has been achieved so far. And some of these things, you know, may be political as South Africa heads into another round of elections. Let's find out the state of our nationals in South Africa this morning. And joining us on the program is the President, Nigeria Citizens Association, South Africa, NICASA, Mr. Frank Onyekwelu, who joins us virtually this morning. Mr. Onyekwelu, good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief on Channels Television.
Good morning to you and thank you for having me. Good morning to all our viewers.
Now, let's start with what is more very important this morning. We hear that about 130 Nigerians at least have applied to leave South Africa amid the continuing anti-illegal immigrant protests. Do you have information as to the immigration status of these Nigerians? Do they have valid documentation?
Thank you so much for that question. Probably as we speak now, the numbers have increased more than 130. As we have other Nigerian citizens that have also applied for such voluntary and free repatriation. However, many of them have different circumstances. In our interaction with some of them as the leadership of the Nigerian community, some of them have issues with the economy, the hardship of the economy. They are struggling to survive. Some of them have documentation issue in that they've applied for
either to renew their existing residence permit or to get another kind of permit that will allow them to trade or do work or get employed in some companies. But due to the documentation process and the delays and the challenges in terms of requirements that you have to provide as a foreign national, it becomes a bit challenging for them to provide such records or such requests. So at this point, many of them has considered their best option is to go back home. Some have issues that maybe they came in, they've worked for 2 or 3 years, and currently there is no more job, or there is no more business, or the resources has finished, and they are now deciding that it's better for them to go back home, find another source of livelihood, and then start up life again, which is considerably easier. They will not be dealing with rentals, maybe if they are staying in their family home, and they will be able to concentrate, maybe continue with 1 or 2 agricultural farming products to sustain livelihood. So some of these are the requests we receive. Some are because of health issue. They have been, they fell sick or have some health challenges, and the cost of treatment as a foreign national here has increased, that whereby you cannot go to some hospitals at the moment and then receive treatment free as it used to be. In some hospitals, you are now meant to pay or consult a private hospital. And some of them now having challenges in that, consider that it will be easier and even more cheaper for them to attend health clinic in Nigeria or attend the medical facilities in Nigeria where they might maybe afford the payment. So these are some of the reports we receive from them. But as of the number of the people that have registered for this voluntary repatriation, the number has gone far above 130.
So talk to us about these anti-illegal immigrant protests now. Have they reduced or are they increasing? And how safe, are Nigerians in those areas of concern that you have heard about attacks or the protests? How safe?
Okay, at the moment, there is calm around. Thank God, thanks to the intervention of the government officials, the diplomatic missions, our embassy, and our consulate here. They have been engaging with the South African counterpart. In the past few days, you realize there was a communication between our Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of International DECO, which is Department of International Relationship here in South Africa, and also from our Acting High Commissioner and the Consul General, also from our Senate and the Presidency, I believe. So all these interventions and the communications has spread news within the country, and there is a bit calm. The protest is no longer proceeding, except, you will still hear 1 or 2 rumors in the social media, which we cannot have control over. You hear some adverts, no, we are marching this place, we are going to march that place. But some of those places, when you monitor the environment, there was no march, or there is no march going on. So we continue to advise our people to be calm and not to confront anyone that is in the street protesting. If they see any sense of protest or any violence within their areas of business or residence, they are kindly advised to close the shops and not engage the protesters, as we want to remain law-abiding and wait for our government's intervention, and which we are seeing coming up gradually. And we hope that it will not just be a mere talk or paperwork, but visible action on ground, assuring Nigerians of their safety and their well-being, even in the diaspora. Thank you.
So I want you to give us some sort of chronicle as to the impact of this, real impact of this. And I'm glad you've talked about the voluntary repatriation, the state of things right now. But in the past 2-3 weeks, just how much of a negative impact have we recorded? I know that there are calls for the autopsy of the 2 Nigerians who died in very questionable circumstances some weeks ago. So there is that one. So speak to us about other, if there are other negative incidents, shops being attacked, being looted, individuals being threatened. Just how much of this have you chronicled in the past 2, 3, 4 weeks of these protests?
All right. You may be aware that this protest is not happening in one province. It has escalated from one province to another. It started from KZN, which is the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and then it now moved on to Eastern Cape Province, then to Western Cape Province, then comes to Gauteng, which is Johannesburg, where we are. Now, in some of these areas, there are series of incidents that we have seen and recorded. For example, in KwaZulu-Natal, some Nigerians were harassed, intimidated, flogged, even their businesses were scattered and they were asked to park from where they are doing their petty business on the streets, and their goods were asked to be taken away or rolled back. And in same thing as Eastern Cape, we have seen some business closes. Even in Johannesburg here, when we received the notification of the march that is going to happen for 3 days, we took cognizance of the experience of the past, how violent this protest becomes, and the attacks on human lives and the businesses and the homes. So we advised our communities that it will be wiser if we can close shops for that 2 or 3 days. I know it will result in loss of income. It will result in people being afraid, anxiety, fears, and tensions. But overall, we have seen heightened tension, fear, intimidations, loss of income. Generally, when you are being stereotyped as a Nigerian, whether you are documented or not, the attack comes on you directly because you are a Nigerian. You may have seen in the social media a young man that is being harassed or tried to be intimidated in the name that he's a Nigerian, only for him to voice out that he's not a Nigerian, rather he's a Malawian. And the person that was approaching him has already mentioned, you Nigerians, you must go. So they are not even singularizing anybody or separating anybody, whether you are documented or not documented. They just said all foreign nationals leave our country. So that has generated tensions and fear that even when you open your shop to conduct your legal business, you might meet some group of people that will come here and say, where are you from?
Right.
Where is your paper? Show us your paper. You are not supposed to be here. I received a report yesterday of an Uber driver that gave a transport lift to a South African, and who ended up telling him, this driving you are doing is supposed to be carried out by South Africans. Sell your car, go back to your country. Such types of intimidation and harassment, right, they continue to engage, and we want it to stop. We are Africans, and we can coexist and co-live together. Absolutely.
The video you referred to, it was led by the media personality Ngizwe Mchuno, who's leading some of these protests. In fact, one of the major figures in this anti-immigration or anti-foreign protests. So the Senate has made a decision. They're coming up with some sort of ad hoc committee to wade into this. Senator Adams Oshiomhole said, you know what, let's go extreme. Let's target South African businesses here in Nigeria and nationalize them in that sense. But the Senate President said, no, we're not going to touch any of those businesses in that sense. One decisive action that you think Nigerian government must make as we wind down?
I think the formal engagement will be better than fighting fire for fire. We do not want to damage the relationship that Nigeria and South Africa has enjoyed in the past years. Nigeria as a country and as a government has played a strong role in the liberation of South Africa during the apartheid regime. And so we want to continue to enjoy the bilateral relationship we have, the trade businesses we have. It's mutually benefiting both countries. So we are not advocating for fighting fire with fire. However, we welcome the idea of a delegate of our Senate representatives visiting South Africa, engaging with their parliaments or the government. In that way, our voice will be heard strongly. And also it will show a strong commitment from Nigerian government assuring their citizens in diaspora that they matter, their lives matters, and anything that concerns them, any threat or any intimidation to their lives and the well-being is a concern to Nigerian citizens. We are advocating for a peaceful dialogue, reaching out and understanding and putting it on the table that let there be strong diplomatic engagement, not just on statements, but let us see visible protection and enforcement on the ground. Let the intimidation minimize, let the stereotype minimize. We do not support any act of crime, and our position is very clear. If any Nigerian commits crime and such person is apprehended, he or she should face the music of the law. Let him be tried in a competent court of law, and if found guilty, he should face the music or the consequences of his actions. We will not allow the wrongdoings of a few to be generalized for an entire continent or country and then painting every individual, every Nigerian citizen with one brush. There are doctors, lawyers, and other good businessmen and women in this country, and we are contributing to the growth of the economy. Yeah,
Mr. Onyekwelu, and we hope that that engagement that you talk about comes sooner rather than later. Already, the Senate has proposed, a fact-finding visit with joint members of the Senate and House of Representatives to visit South Africa and look into these issues. But just before we go, do you feel safe residing in South Africa at the moment?
Yes, I feel safe.
Wow.
I feel safe, but I'm not just talking about myself. I want to also be a voice to others who are threatened. I've been here for 20 years, and I love South Africa as much as I love Nigeria. We want to just coexist and grow together.
Yeah, and we hope it stays that way, and that all other nationals besides South African nationals are safe in South Africa. Mr. Frank Onyekwelu is the president of a Nigerian community, Nigerian Citizens Association, South Africa. Thank you for coming to bring insight to these issues on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so from here, we'll take a break, and it'll be time to talk politics of the PDP. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Well, let's talk People's Democratic Party, PDP. Well, it's meant to be Nigeria's main opposition party, but this opposition party has been going through a lot, not this year alone, not last year, for the past years since it lost election in 2015. Well, then President Goodluck Jonathan lost election, and what we've seen of the PDP since then has been infighting, factions, court cases, almost endless. So is there a way out for the People's Democratic Party, once one of Africa's biggest, in fact, the biggest political party in Africa? Well, we're joined on the program by former Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Principal Private Secretary to the National Chairman, Turaki Group, of course, Mr. Ibrahim Abdullahi joins us from our Abuja studio. You're welcome to the program, Mr. Abdullahi.
Thank you, Ayo. Thank you for having me.
So let me begin with getting your response to some of the comments made by the FCT minister during the media chat yesterday. And he says, well, the Turaki Group must not try to open any form of account to receive monies, either for nomination form, that if they do that, or if you do that, you'll be in trouble. He even said you cannot get any building for your headquarters, in some sense, in the nation's capital, Abuja. I mean, this is one of several comments that he made about the Turaki Group and the infighting within the PDP. So let's naturally get your response, your reaction to those statements from the FCT minister.
Well, you know, at the risk of sounding immodest, we have refused for a long time now to be joining issues with such a character. Everyone in this country has come to see the person of this fellow, his disposition, his tendencies, his recklessness, and how he has condescended so low with a responsibility as big as a minister of the National Republic, of the Federal Republic. Now, whatever it is he has said, like you said, he said several other things targeting on the personalities of some individuals, calling names and disparaging them in the manner he did. PDP that we are holding today as a genuine PDP, as a credible PDP, and as the sincere PDP that every Nigerian who believes in constitutional democracy identifies with. We are not perturbed, we are not bothered. It's not a game of wheat where some touts who are supposed to be in the market square or what do you call it, motor park garage will now come and continue to dish. You have said it that in the last 3 years since losing election, you know, losing his presidential ambition in 2022, this fellow has not allowed PDP to have peace. We lost election fine in 2015. We conceded the loss. Even before counting was over officially, we sought the victor to come over with his transition committee, and then we handed over power. And that was done by one great African and now elder statesman, you know, President Goodluck Jonathan. He accepted, and he said at that time that his presidency was not worth the blood of one Nigerian, and he kept his word, lo and behold. And he could have, you know, rigged his way, like we see these people doing these days, and still hold on to power if he wanted. But he, you know, opted to go and allow the system, you know, to be sustained. One would have expected that following that, you know, concession, Nigeria's democracy would be deepened with the tendencies that would follow subsequently, just to build on what Goodluck Jonathan and the PDP did in 2015. But suffice to say, you and I are in this country. We've seen what happened under Buhari's 8 years. There was no election for the APC to lose, and they will get it at all costs. It doesn't matter. In fact, whatever you do, they have said it outrightly, that even if you murder the whole country and move into the APC, you are as safe as a fresh newborn. And you have seen them maintaining it. They've done it in 2023. You can see what they are doing today. But not to digress from the question, we are not perturbed. We have not lost sleep to a person who has demonstrated, you know, crass arrogance, who is boastful, who is haughty, who is arrogant, who has, over these years, you know, proven that he's not a gentleman that can be taken into confidence. Virtually everybody he has related with in his life, those who are his benefactors and those who he impacted their life in some ways, or you may want to call beneficiaries, have all found one reason or the other to part ways with him. He would always insult them. He would always descend on individuals. If you take his River State problem alone, those who helped him to become what he is, and those who he has claimed to help to become what they are, he has all fallen apart with them, one after the other, beginning from Madam Jonathan, Patience Jonathan, the former First Lady, to Jonathan himself, the former President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, to his benefactor, Peter Odili, who was the leader of the state that Patience Jonathan took to plead with him to become the governor, go to secondos that he brought as national chairman, start with Modu Sharif that he brought, and then McCarthy, who took over the leadership of the party at some time, to the secondos that he forced on the PDP at that time, and to Ayu that he brought as national chairman, to Damagun that he took at some point and said is national chairman, and currently to Kabiru Tanimo Turaki, who is the national chairman of the party, at least in interim capacity at the moment, following the nullification of his convention in Ibadan on the 15th and 16th of November. All of these names I counted for you, including Fubara, that is ideally supposed to be his political benefactor, beneficiary. What exactly are what 1% of these names that I mentioned, say 1% that has been spared by Goodluck Jonathan, this fellow. I don't like calling his name. I have since refrained from doing so. Times it was that I also came even to this medium of yours and I spoke for him, agreeing with the zoning formula of 2022 and some of the arguments that they maintained during the G5 struggle. I personally here then as Deputy National Publicity Secretary supported him, spoke for him, believed in some of his arguments, but a responsible person will have a time where he will draw the line. You cannot be serving the APC. I have never seen an irony like this. coming to say that we must not promote a presidential candidate in 2027. And at the same time, you are claiming to be the leader of the APC. We don't have anything. That lexicon does not exist in our constitution. It's a very strange word. We don't have anything as national leader. We are not APC, where somebody was national leader before he now became the president. If that is where he's drawing his inspiration, sorry, tell him it's a wrong thing. It's a wrong decision. It has fallen flat on the face. He will regret it, that I know. And every responsible Nigerian has known that. That conundrum that they call acting, or whatever they call it, National Working Committee, has been nullified completely by the Supreme Court judgment, just like it nullified, the Ibadan Convention. And then as PDP was before now, it didn't have a leadership. But the BOT stepped in, as the conscience of the party and provided an interim leadership, which led to the summoning of the NEC, and NEC, in line with our Constitution, Section 31(2), after following a two-third majority, and a quorum was formed, provided an interim leadership in Kabiru Tanimu Turaki, which we are having today as the leadership of the PDP. Forget people who speak after being influenced by substance. Let him go and say, who is in control of the account of the PDP? If he tells you that he's warning private financial institution, like his intimidating media organization, which you have seen yesterday. By the way, I must commend your correspondent there, who did so very well, Terry Ikumi. He stood his ground. He defied the odds. He defies the attempt to coerce, intimidate, and blackmail him not to ask his questions. And I must commend Channels TV for doing that very well. And of course, Arise TV's Ngozi did also very well to stand their ground. Those of them who were, intimidated by his coax and arrogance, his haughtiness and rabble-rousing, should wake up from these tendencies. We are building a very dangerous precedence in this country, which if we don't help curtail quick enough, to blossom into a monster. All
right, Mr. Abdullahi, it appears as if litigation has not solved the leadership crisis in the PDP. The leadership crisis has defied every form of intervention, disciplinary committee, court action. It's defied everything. And Mr. Wike has said the Supreme Court judgment has upheld the Abdul Rahman-led leadership, and he dares your group to go ahead and sell form or open any office in the federal capital as the headquarters of the PDP. What's the grand plan then? Because your group and their group also has, between now and I believe the 31st of May, to tidy up things, submit party register, and of course conduct presidential primaries. So what is the ultimate plan for the Saminu Turaki-led PDP?
Well, his individual threats and subterfuge is not anything we are losing sleep over, Bukola. We've carried on. I speak to you authoritatively. Only yesterday, personally, I went to obtain a form for the governorship of Kebbi State, alongside many others who flew into town, and procured their form for various offices in the PDP. We have our secretariat where we've been running, as it is a temporary secretariat, since we have found discomfort in the position of a judgment they obtained from a federal high court, allowing them to go ahead with the occupation and be provided security at our main office in Wadata. We've been operating in an office. He knows the location. He should come there and take the office if he can. Of course, it's a temporary office, but we're meeting there. We've been carrying our functions there. Look, we are descending into a state of anarchy, a Hobbesian state of nature, as Thomas Hobbes would describe it, where life is brutish, short, and nasty. These individuals have clearly chosen not to respect the law. You expect a supposed lawyer in his standing. Anyways, I'm not surprised he has never been to the courtroom for once since becoming a lawyer, the so-called lawyer. Some people say if he was a lawyer, he probably would have been trained in the evening, these affiliate courses to become a lawyer, whatever that means. Because I cannot find difficulty in believing that. Otherwise, why would a lawyer be interpreting a Supreme Court judgment that upheld, the judgment of the appeal court, saying upholding the suspension of the individuals that he claimed to be having today as officials of the party, while dismissing at the same time or nullifying the Convention of Ibadan? Every person, you don't need to be a lawyer to agree, to understand, He's saying that the caretaker, the CTC, certified true copy of the judgment, is expected on Friday. These are the tendencies that we have since been warning this country under Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the APC, that this country is sleeping under a very dangerous precipice. If we are not careful, we will wake up one day and realize there is no republic. Otherwise, why will an individual be so arrogant? Bukola, recently I was with a former president of one of these African countries. In his living room here in Nigeria, probably on exile, he's been here. And he was wondering, the same fellow in question was on air, ranting, boasting, casting aspersion and threatening everybody, by the way. This man was asking, come on, is this country degenerating to this level where a supposed government functionary is descending on virtually everybody, state governors, ministers, former presidents, everybody, he doesn't care. And the system is allowing him. You see, like I started my conversation, at the risk of sounding immodest, we don't want to join, because when you go now fighting with stripping yourself naked in the market square, fighting a lunatic, you will be described as one. Yes.
You say the Turaki group is going ahead with its own business, but from the look of things, INEC still appears to be dealing with the Abdurrahman-led group. I see here on its website, National Chairman Abdurrahman Mohammed, National Secretary Senator Samuel Anyanwu, National Treasurer Hamid Yari Mohammed. So INEC appears to still be dealing with the Wike-led group of the PDP.
Okay, I will tell you something. Ahmed Yari is with us. He was even with us yesterday. He has always been with us. He was a former financial secretary of the party. But whether INEC replaces those names there or it allows them, it's immaterial. What is important is what is before the law. The Supreme Court has spoken, and that is the final arbiter in the land. If INEC chooses out of its mischief, which it has demonstrated lately and everybody in this country has seen, that is up to it. But our lawyers have written INEC only yesterday, drawing its attention, to the development of the Supreme Court. And if it is delaying until it sees the CTC, which now the FCT minister is predicting will come on Monday. And that is how despicable this system has become. How does he get to even know when it is expected to be released? We all have been expecting. And sadly, it's been 7 days since the Supreme Court judgment. One will be wondering, what is keeping the CTC? What would be keeping the CTC? I don't see any reason or rational argument from the Supreme Court to say that we cannot obtain 7 days after judgment the certified true copy of that judgment, so that all of this matter will be put to rest. But it doesn't matter. If they delay it till the next 10 years, what I do know is that not a single letter in that judgment can be changed. Because it is not, as I speak to you as a lawyer, it is not possible. The 5 lawyers that sat there, judges that sat there, revered judges, and then that it was a split judgment, like 3-2, would have all the copies of each other's judgment, and then the world has seen it. And so there's no waste of time. We're not losing any sleep. Let them try as hard as they can. They will release it in the fullness of time, and we will get started with our. We are going ahead with our activities because BOT, like I told you, in line with the provision of our extant laws, stepped in, invoked the NEC, that's the National Executive Committee of the party, which now, to third, nominated a 13-man, committee in interim capacity to preside over the affairs of the party. It is not like this kind of ramshackle arrangement where an individual, after getting intoxicated from the left side of his bed, he starts nominating people he picked from Oshodi Market or from Aba Market or from Opiweka in Onitsha, or here in Yanya in Maraba, and just come and form them as a NEC or BOT and everything, because he has small dollars that he dishes to them. It's sad. Some of them, when you speak with them, they will tell you that I have school fees to pay. We know that that thing is shambolic. It's just a terrible arrangement from a very terrible character. But we have to just identify with him in the meantime so that we will survive. They all know that it's falsehood from the pit of hell, and it cannot stand. No matter how hard you try, truth will prevail over darkness.
So looks like the knives are out right now. I don't know if things are now at a point where there's no return from what has happened. But I want you to speak to this as we wind down. For those who are worried, they are concerned that if I try to pick a ticket in the PDP, I may end up losing it all. Because there's controversy about who's the leader, who's going to sign my form. What if I end up, not even being on the ballot at the end of it, or the PDP ends up not being on the ballot for some court case or the other. So what is the way forward? And I hear that even Governor Seyi Makinde himself He's looking for ways to collaborate either with the coalition, with ADP, but basically find a plan B, just so you don't put all your eggs in one basket, and that basket ends up being the one with most holes in it.
No, Governor Seyi Makinde, a perfect gentleman, the last man standing, an incredible performer, one hope that this country has. I am so happy for him and his generation and his performance, and I envy the people of Oyo State as I see Governor Makinde about to leave in the next 1 year. I pray God gives him a successor that will measure up to his performance or surpass it. That is the prayer of every father. At our last NEC, he was there in person, in blood and in flesh, and he reiterated his faith and confidence with the PDP. He has not minced his words in saying that he would remain with the PDP. It doesn't matter if he runs for election or not. But I tell you one thing, PDP will be on the ballot from presidential to councillorship. We will promote candidates, we will sell our forms, they will take part in election. INEC must recognize them, and we will return them victorious by the grace of God, and Nigeria will be salvaged from this despair and despondency, and the twin maladies of hunger and poverty, and the hopelessness and despair, and this unprecedented insecurity in the land, which seem to have reduced even the quality of life of Nigerians. So we will retrieve this country from this army of occupation and buccaneers masquerading in the garb of Democrats. Nigeria has never had it this bad, and by the grace of God, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. So Makinde's identification with the opposition before now was a collective decision that opposition parties and leaders were looking at. Of course, you will recall he hosted it in Ibadan, trying to see how we can broker an alliance amongst us and see how we present a common candidate to go against this elephant in the house,
right? Which
does not mean well for this country. Yeah, but he's in PDP, I can assure you this, rest assured. He has not contemplated it, leaving it, and he will not leave it by the ultimate grace of God.
Well, I saw some poster recently congratulating him for emerging as the chairman of a PDP Governors Forum. Did that really happen? He's the only PDP governor.
Automatically, he is. He said it even at the forum there where we had our neck. He's the chairman and the member of the PDP Governors Forum, and you can see how God will make you, elevate you without you asking for it. He never aspired for it, and today he has sat on that saddle as the chairman of Governors Forum and the member of the
It's not a
Governors
joke.
Forum.
It's for real.
It's for real. Certainly, it's for real.
Okay.
Certainly, he's the chairman and the member. It's a one-man chairman committee.
It's a one-man army, a one-man tag team. We
Yes.
have to thank you so much, Mr. Ibrahim Abdullahi, former Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the PDP and Principal Private Secretary to the National Chairman now of the Tanimaturaki Group. Thank you for your time, and honestly, we wish your party the very best.
Thank you so very much, Kikiolu. You guys are doing a wonderful job. Amazingly, let's work together and salvage this country. You can see how an individual speaks to the fourth estate of the realm with disrespect, with arrogance, with haughtiness, coercing them in an interview of 2 hours. You have dominated 1 hour, 40 minutes speaking. And when the media tries to ask questions, you box them, you coerce them, you intimidate them. You guys are doing a wonderful job, and God will help us to get rid of these terrible elements in the system. Thank you very much.
Well, we'll continue to do our job with professionalism and ensure that all sides are heard. Thank you once again. We'll take a moment now. When we return, we have a major dispute that has been building up. It looks like there's been some resolution, but is that resolution being implemented? We'll find out in a moment. Stay with us.
Welcome back. So let's get to our next conversation, which borders on the disputed delineation of Warri federal constituency. And in 2025, there were several engagements in the broadcast media with speakers from both sides, the Shekiri and Ijaw groups, disputing the INEC's delineation of Warri federal constituency, saying that it goes against the Supreme Court judgment of 2022, which ordered a fresh delineation exercise, which according to it had impacted negatively on the conduct of elections in polling units in Warri constituency in the past. And so both sides are saying that if INEC does not release the report of April 2025 on the exercise, that it may impact negatively on the coming elections in 2027. So let's get an insight into what the current state of things are ahead of 2027. And joining us now on the program for this conversation is Mr. Eric Omari, a lawyer. Mr. Omari, good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here again.
First of all, let's start with clarity over this report that ought to have been released by INEC. What are the expectations from this report, and will it resolve the disputed delineation that INEC had embarked upon in the past? Let's start with that.
Well, in the first place, I don't think that there is a disputed delineation as per se. What happened was that on the 2nd day of December 2022, the Supreme Court of Nigeria gave a final judgment to the effect that INEC should carry out a fresh delineation of polling units and electoral wards all over the Warri Federal Constituency. And as a law-abiding agency, we expected that INEC will comply with that judgment. Yes, indeed, INEC called for a series of stakeholders meeting, did a field verification of the constituencies involved, then came up with an interim, what they call referred to as an interim report. The expectation was that after the submission, the presentation of the interim report to stakeholders, INEC will move to the final stage by releasing the final report so as to use it to conduct the 2027 election. But unfortunately, more than a year after that interim report was submitted, INEC has not been able to do that. Now, this is the issue. The issue here is that the Supreme Court in that judgment said the contention of those who went to court was that the electoral wards and units that were existing in the Warri Federal Constituency were not properly done. And the Supreme Court agreed with them and said, look, INEC, go back and do a fresh process, meaning start afresh. INEC has not completed that process. INEC has then gone ahead to release timetable for the conduct of the 2027 election. So the question is, without completing the fresh delineation of electoral wards and units, where are the wards and units that you will use in conducting the 2027 election in the Warri Federal Constituency? So that raises a fear in the constituency that if INEC does not complete this process, they may be de-emphasized from participating in the electoral process. So some of us have been wondering, what exactly is the problem? Why has INEC not concluded this process? On the 28th of September 2025, INEC Director of Voter Education and Publicity, one Victoria Eta-Mercy, stated that the delineation has been suspended, that it has been escalated to the Office of the National Security Advisor. Then on the 6th of February 2026, Abdulhai Zuru, one of the national commissioners, while addressing protesters from Warri, stated that they are consulting with the Office of the National Security Advisor. As a lawyer, I find that very strange, because under Section 160, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution, INEC is independent in the performance of its functions. It states clearly that INEC shall not take instruction from the president. So the question is, if INEC cannot take instructions from the president, therefore means that all positions under the executive, including the Office of the National Security Advisor, which is under the president, INEC ought not to take instruction from it. So it amounts to a legal absurdity for INEC, in violation of the provisions of Section 160, to say that they are waiting for the Office of the National Security Advisor to give them direction on how to implement a judgment of the Supreme Court. Again, that is also a violation of Section 287 of the Constitution. The Constitution says that once the Supreme Court delivers a judgment, all agencies of government, their only obligation is to enforce it. In this case, the Supreme Court specifically, in its December 2nd judgment, said, INEC, you are hereby compelled to carry out fresh delineation. So the issue is, why will INEC, having been compelled by the highest court in the land, still go ahead with seeking permission or to wait for direction from the Office of the National Security Advisor in order to implement a judgment of the Supreme Court? That is a legal absurdity. Then another dimension to the problem is selective implementation of judgment. Only a few days ago, INEC released a statement that they want to implement judgments of Federal High Court and in some cases Court of Appeal with respect to suppress constituencies. 11 in Kogi State, 4 in Delta, across the nation. The question is, the issue of suppressed constituency is about electoral representation. The issue of electoral polling units and wards that INEC Supreme Court asked them to conduct fresh delineation in Warri is about electoral representation.
Right.
Why would you go to the one of suppressed constituencies in Kogi and some other states? You want to implement that, but you don't want to implement the one that Supreme Court, the highest court, has asked you to do in Warri. Right. So the impression in Warri here is that INEC is being selective in its implementation of Supreme Court judgments of court. INEC ought not to be. In short, if there is any judgment that INEC ought to respect, it's a judgment of the Supreme Court. And this is further made more complex by the fact that we have a professor of law and a senior advocate of Nigeria as chairman of INEC. Therefore, stakeholders ought not to be agitating for INEC to comply with judgment. So, in effect, these are the issues.
All right.
The issue
so let me come in quickly here. So for full disclosure, so people understand the proper context, who do you represent in this case? Is it the Shakiri?
Well, I argued the case at the Supreme Court. I argued this case.
Yes. So which of the sides are you did you represent? So for full disclosure, so people understand.
I led the Honorable Judge Timidimi and others who filed the case on behalf of themselves and the young people of Warri Federal Constituency.
Right. So we've had an Ijot chieftain also calling on the NSA to ensure that INEC completes the delineation. And you say that INEC doesn't have any business with the NSA, but we know that INEC does not work does not work in a bubble in that sense. It's not an island. For it to even conduct elections, INEC works with security agencies, works with transport unions, works with all sorts of people to ensure that the process goes smoothly. So are you saying, matter of fact, that you suspect interference, or don't you think that this is a normal procedure? If they're even going to conduct such, in that kind of atmosphere, you need all of the security advice that you can get.
No. Let us get the context very clear. When we say INEC collaborate with other agents of government, does not mean that INEC they need to take their approval. No. Under the Electoral Act and our Constitution, there is a scheme of work and responsibilities of different government. For example, if INEC is to conduct an election, they need security support. But that does not mean that they must get the approval of the National Security Advisor before they can do elections.
So has INEC said that they are getting approval? I just want to be clear. Has INEC said they're trying to get approval from the NSA? Because I'm looking at all of the official statements from INEC, and there's nothing of such nature.
Hold on. I have just quoted on the 6th of February conversation by Abdullahi Juru and that of 28th of September by Mrs. Victoria Mercy. You see, the context is this. In this context, the issue of national security advisors' advice or whatever does not arise. INEC has already done the field work. Where they are is that it is for them to release the final report, having taken representation from stakeholders after the interim report was submitted. At that point, they no longer need the office of the National Security Advisor to give the final say. I have earlier quoted Section 160 of the 1999 Constitution. INEC, in its doing its job, doesn't take direction from anybody. Yes, there may be collaboration, but that does not make their work to be subjected to the office of the National Security Advisor. That's the point here. INEC to say that, look, they are waiting for the direction or advice of the National Security Advisor before they will release the delineation report is a violation of Section 160. And it has implication on
what were the exact words? Pardon me, what were the exact words of INEC regarding the NSA? Again, I'm looking at at least what we have officially, that statement which you referenced from Mrs. Victoria Etamesi. There is nothing of the NSA there, but you said there was a conversation afterwards. So what were the exact words here? So we're clear.
The consultation with the office of the NSA. But what I'm making is that INEC does not need that consultation or whatsoever approval before they implement a report or carry out their function. This function is their statutory responsibility, and the Constitution says they enjoy independence in the performance of their functions. The fact that some stakeholders may have raised issue doesn't mean that INEC will not do its responsibility. The point is this: there has never been any time where INEC carries out any political activity in Nigeria without objections here and there. INEC's responsibility is to look at those objections, do what it is expected to do under the law, and complete the process. But the meat of what I'm saying is that INEC has no excuse whatsoever not to complete the delineation or complete the implementation of the judgment of the Supreme Court in Honorable Judge Timinimi and others against INEC up to this moment, because without completing that process, it cannot conduct any election known to law in the Warri Federal constituency. And the people of the Warri Federal constituency has a right to fully participate in the electoral process. That's the point. So whatever excuse that, yes.
Now that has been, thrashed as much as possible. You said earlier that there is no dispute over the delineation, but many times last year we had quite a number of groups contest the delineation that had been done, especially the Ishekiri groups, which said that it allotted more wards to the Ijaw group and that it specifically excludes them, underrepresents them in whatever elections that will be conducted subsequently. So do you deny that there was quite a lot of concern expressed particularly by the Ishekiri groups last year over the delineation?
Like I said earlier, in any electoral process, people are bound to express their dissatisfaction. Now, in this context, INEC first and foremost submitted a report and call it interim and asked stakeholders to make their input. What that simply implies is that INEC envisage that people will make input in response to their report. It wasn't only the Ishekiri groups. The young groups made their representation. The Robos made their representation. But the point is this: having taken this representation, INEC is under duty to look at them and come up with its final decision.
So is it perhaps...
It cannot hide under the umbrella...
Is it perhaps because of this contention...
groups not to continue or complete the process?
So is it perhaps because of this contention that INEC is delaying the release of the final report?
Well, it is for INEC to say that, but my own point is that INEC cannot hide under the umbrella of that contention to refuse to obey the final judgment of the Supreme Court. Whether contention or not, it is under an obligation. If there are issues raised by stakeholders, they have a duty to address those issues and come up with their final report in compliance with the order of the Supreme Court.
And so how do you propose that this will be resolved? Because there are concerns being raised by all groups now, not just the Ishekiri, Urobo. We're reading in the reports that they're kicking against this and that it will impact negatively on the coming elections in Warri Federal constituency.
The resolution is very simple. Nobody, as to the best of my knowledge, I have been in court for these cases, I have been in stakeholders meeting. Nobody has said that the judgment of the court should not be obeyed. What some of people have said is, look, I think that INEC ought to have considered this, considered that. All those representations are before INEC. INEC has looked at these representations severally and haven't looked at them. It is now their responsibility, based on their criteria and the guidelines that came up with, to resolve these issues and come up with the final report. I will repeat again, INEC has no right whatsoever under our laws to hide under the umbrella of protest by stakeholders, not to obey a judgment of the Supreme Court. The representation of groups have been done. Look at those representation, address the ones that you can address in accordance with your rules, and come up with the final report. But under any other circumstances, it must come up with the report before the conduct of the 2027 election.
All right, Mr. Eric Omari, we thank you so much for coming on the program to bring perspective to these issues. Mr. Eric Omari is a lawyer representing the claimant in this suit between INEC
the appellant and the Supreme Court.
The appellant at the Supreme Court. Thank you for coming on the program.
Well, just before we go, we must reiterate Channels Television's rebuttal to the statement made by FCT Minister Nyesom Wike that Channels is making money from the land allocated to it in Guzape. That statement is not correct. And here's a backstory. Now, that property in question houses our national headquarters in Abuja. And the land was allocated to Channels Television on March the 6th, 2007. That's 19 plus years ago. And was allocated for commercial purpose by the then FCT minister. And it's important to note that all of the required fees and charges were fully paid. So that statement is not correct. And of course, on the payment bit, absolutely. We gave full disclosure before the media chat started. For us to bring this to our audience, we deploy our outside broadcasting van, deploy a crew of up to 6+ people. So to lock down 1, 2 hours, 3 hours of broadcast time, absolutely, you will pay for it. And our rates are out there in the open. It is transparent for all to see. We're a news and media broadcast organization, not a not-for-profit organization. And in terms of the statement he made about allocating land to press people and journalists, well, it's important for the FCT minister to put out the facts. And if fees are meant to be paid by those journalists, they should and must be paid. That is the process. We here at Channels Television stand for integrity. We're a station built on trust. I will continue to do our work professionally and ask all of the tough questions. We will not back down. Well, that's the show for today. Thank you for joining. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
Sunrise Daily is up next, so there's more value. Stay with Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.